This is Understanding U.S. Government. I'm your host, Mr. Giese. In this episode, we will be discussing the presidential election process. The questions we will be trying to answer is how the election of presidents has changed over time and what the electoral process looks like today. In order to answer those, we will be discussing what events happened to change the elections of the president, what is the role of national conventions in the electoral process, what role the caucus primary system plays, and what we use to elect the President of the United States of America. Let's try to answer those questions now. Before we can discuss how the electoral process looks now, we must take a look back and see what it looked like before. The critical point will be around the 12th Amendment, which was ratified in 1804. We will talk about what this is shortly. Prior to this amendment, there were two elections, that of 1796 and that of 1800, that tested the system of electing a president. George Washington was elected unanimously before the election of 1796. In the election of 1796, John Adams, a Federalist, was elected as president, and his arch-rival Thomas Jefferson, a Democratic Republican, was elected as vice president. How could this happen? Well, prior to 1804, electors had two votes to cast. Once all the votes were in, the candidate in first place won the presidency, and the candidate in second place won the office of vice president. The election of 1800 further highlighted this issue. Jefferson, a Democratic Republican, tied with the vice president nominee, Aaron Burr. Jefferson clearly led popular opinion, but in the case of a tie, the House must decide the winner. It took 36 separate votes to decide this. So the 12th Amendment was ratified after that to clear up this issue. The 12th Amendment establishes that the president and vice president will be two different elections. So what does the process of running for and winning a presidential election look like? Well, first, the candidate must decide on running for president. Usually they will announce this to the public with a press conference. Once they do, their campaign will start. Throughout this process, they will be trying to get their message out and separate themselves from the others in the same political party. The reason for this is to win delegates toward the nomination. Candidates gain these delegates through the primary process. Primaries are similar to elections, and voters get to cast their ballot for the candidate of their choosing. Caucuses could be used as well, but they do not cast ballots. Caucuses are more open in the effect that people are declaring their votes for a particular candidate and then try to convince others to support the same candidate. Whether there's a primary or caucus, it depends on what state you're in. Once a state runs their caucus or primary, delegates are then chosen and given to those candidates. Ultimately, the goal for a candidate running in the primary is to be named the nominee at the National Convention, whether it is Democratic or Republican. At the convention, they announce the nominee and their running mate. However, this is not the only decision made. The political party develops their political platform, or the key issues that the party will run on. Once the nominee and the platform is established, the candidate then campaigns again. This time it's with the political party's support. They will be running against the winner of the other political party's nominee. The goal is to win the general election. The office of president is decided upon by the system of electoral college. Each state is worth a set number of electoral votes. All states, except for Maine and Nebraska, are winner-take-all states, meaning that whoever wins the most votes in a state receives all the electoral votes for that state. There are a total of 538 electoral votes, and in order to win the general election, a candidate must win at least 270 of those votes. Once they do that, they have won the Electoral College. The process of winning the election of president has changed significantly since George Washington. Political parties play a large role in this process, but without it, we would have too many candidates running. This would make it more difficult to gain a majority, and it does help narrow the choices for the electorate. There are some flaws in the Electoral College, like the fact that the winner of the popular vote could possibly lose the Electoral College, that have caused some to question if another system is more appropriate. However, at this time, the Electoral College is the system that the United States uses to elect their president.